If you're busy all day, but still feel like your life isn't moving forward, listen carefully, because this was one of the most dangerous traps of my life, and I fell into it without realizing it. I stayed busy for years. My days were full. My calendar looked responsible. From the outside, it seemed like I was doing fine. Inside, I was standing still. Before I go on, if you're in your 20s or 30s and you're trying to build a better life, not just stay distracted, subscribe. I'm not speaking from success. I'm speaking from regret, and regret sees patterns very clearly. I'm 70 years old now, and I can tell you this with certainty. Being busy is not the same as growing. In my 20s, I confused movement with progress. I ran errands, worked long hours, stayed connected, stayed occupied. I felt tired, so I assumed I was advancing. I wasn't. I was just exhausting myself without changing anything meaningful. Busy felt safe. Busy felt productive. Busy meant I didn't have to sit alone with uncomfortable questions like, am I actually becoming better? Or am I building anything that will matter in 10 years? As long as I stayed busy, I could avoid those questions, and avoidance is very comfortable when it's disguised as responsibility. The problem is, growth requires friction. It requires doing things that challenge your identity, your patience, your discipline. Busyness rarely does that. Most of my busy days were filled with tasks that maintained my life, not tasks that improved it. I kept things running, but I didn't move them forward. At the time, I thought I was being practical. I thought growth would happen naturally if I just stayed active long enough. No one warned me that growth is selective. It only happens when you choose effort that stretches you, not activity that distracts you. So if you're constantly tired but still in the same place, if your days are full but your skills aren't improving, if years are passing and your life looks mostly the same, don't ignore that feeling. I ignored it for a long time, and by the time I understood the difference between being busy and actually growing, I had already spent decades mistaking motion for progress. The reason being busy feels so convincing is because it comes with noise. Emails, messages, deadlines, obligations. That noise creates the illusion of importance. I felt needed. I felt responsible. I felt involved. But none of that meant I was becoming more capable, more disciplined, or more independent. It just meant I was reacting to life instead of shaping it. In my 20s and 30s, I filled my days with tasks that kept me afloat. I answered calls, solved small problems, showed up where I was expected. At night, I was exhausted. But when I looked honestly at myself, nothing essential had changed. My thinking was the same, my habits were the same, my limits were the same. That's when I should have been alarmed. I wasn't. Growth is quiet and uncomfortable. It often looks unimpressive. Learning a new skill when you're bad at it, practicing discipline when no one notices, sitting alone to think instead of staying entertained. I avoided those things because they didn't feel urgent. Busy things always felt urgent. Growth never did, until it was too late. What no one tells you is that busyness can be a form of fear. Fear of slowing down, fear of realizing you're not where you thought you'd be, fear of facing the gap between who you are and who you could become. I stayed busy to avoid that gap, and the longer I avoided it, the wider it became. I also learned that being busy is socially rewarded. People praise you for it, they respect it, they rarely question it. Growth, on the other hand, often isolates you. It requires saying no. It requires disappointing people. It requires choosing long-term progress over short-term approval. I chose approval. If you're busy but not growing, you're not failing, but you are drifting. And drifting feels harmless right up until you look back and realize how far you floated from the life you wanted to build. There was a moment when I finally noticed something was wrong. Not because my life collapsed, but because nothing was changing. Year after year, my days looked different, but my position in life didn't. Same worries, same limits, same conversations. That's when it hit me. I wasn't building momentum, I was just maintaining survival. Being busy trained me to respond, not to decide. My time belonged to whoever demanded it first. I rarely chose what deserved my best energy. Growth requires intentionality, deciding what matters and protecting it. I never protected anything important long enough for it to compound. I also avoided mastery. Mastery requires focus, repetition, and boredom. Busyness let me avoid all three. I could feel productive without ever becoming excellent at anything. And when you don't develop excellence, options shrink. You become replaceable. You become dependent. I didn't see it then, but I feel it now. Another dangerous thing about constant busyness is that it steals your reflection time. Without reflection, you repeat the same year over and over with slightly different details. I thought I was moving forward because I was tired, but fatigue is not proof of progress. Sometimes it's just proof of poor direction. At 70, I can tell you this clearly. The people who truly grow aren't the busiest. They're the most selective. They choose a few difficult things and give them sustained attention. I chose many easy things and gave them scattered effort. The results were predictable. If you recognize yourself in this, don't panic. Awareness is the beginning of change. But don't ignore it either, because the longer you stay busy without growing, the harder it becomes to stop, and the more painful it is to realize how much time you traded for nothing lasting. The most painful realization came later, when I understood that busyness had slowly trained me to avoid responsibility for my own direction. When you're busy all the time, you can always blame something else. Work was demanding. People needed me. Circumstances were complicated. Life was hectic. Those excuses sound reasonable, and that's why they're dangerous. They allowed me to stay occupied without ever asking myself the hardest question: is this actually leading somewhere? I didn't design my life. I reacted to it. My days were decided by urgency, not importance. Whatever screamed the loudest got my attention, and the things that mattered most, my health, my skills, my long-term future, were quiet. They didn't demand immediate action, so I ignored them. Growth rarely screams, it whispers, and I was too busy to listen. Over time, this created a strange kind of emptiness. I was doing a lot, but I wasn't proud of much. I couldn't point to anything solid and say, that changed because of me. No deep expertise, no strong foundation, no inner confidence, just activity, just motion, just exhaustion. And the worst part was, I thought this was normal adulthood. I watched people around me slowly pull ahead, not suddenly, quietly. They weren't working more hours, they weren't more stressed, they were more focused. They protected their energy. They said no more often than I did. They chose one or two hard paths and stayed on them long enough to see results. I stayed busy so I wouldn't have to face the discomfort of choosing, and possibly choosing wrong. Busyness also numbed my sense of urgency. When every day feels full, you assume you're making progress. Years pass faster that way. You don't notice time slipping because you're always occupied. Then one day, you look back and realize you've been running hard without actually going anywhere. That moment is terrifying, not because you failed, but because you don't know how to start over. If you're in your 20s or 30s and you feel constantly busy but strangely unfulfilled, pay attention. That feeling isn't laziness or ingratitude. It's your awareness waking up. It's the part of you that knows maintenance is not growth and motion is not direction. I ignored that signal for decades. I don't recommend that mistake to anyone. Busyness will gladly take all your time. Only growth gives it back to you.
At 70, I can finally say this without confusion. Being busy was never my problem. Avoiding growth was. Busyness was just the cover story. It made my life look full while keeping it small. It kept me moving without forcing me to change. And that trade felt fair until the years added up. If you're busy but not growing, nothing dramatic will warn you. No alarm goes off, no collapse happens. Life simply passes. And one day, you realize you're older, more tired, and still carrying the same limits you had years ago. That realization hurts more than any failure because you can't blame a lack of effort. You were exhausted. You just put your effort in the wrong places. Growth asks for a different kind of discipline. Not more hours, but better ones. Not more tasks, but fewer, harder ones. It asks you to choose discomfort that compounds over activity that disappears. I avoided that choice because it required focus, patience, and saying no to things that made me feel useful. If you're in your 20s or 30s, here's the truth I wish I had heard clearly. Your future will not be shaped by how busy you are. It will be shaped by what you consistently grow. Skills, health, discipline, self-respect. Those things don't come from full schedules. They come from deliberate effort. So pause. Look at your days honestly. Ask yourself whether your busyness is building something or just filling time. You don't need to quit everything. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. But you do need to stop confusing exhaustion with progress. I spent decades doing that. You don't have to. You are not late.